Let's talk about where Deshaun Watson might land in 2021. Now, the Texans are saying they're not answering the phone, but there are a lot of rumors out there as to where Deshaun Watson could play football in 2021. Chicago, could it be Denver? And I've got a new one for you, and I'm going to talk to my boy Yarks about it. A rumor circling around news wires and radio in Phoenix, in Arizona, in Glendale, and it's Deshaun Watson to the Cardinals. Let's break it down. The Fantasy Football Show begins now.
This is the Fantasy Football Show with your host, Smitty.
Top 5 running back. You're watching the Fantasy Football Show. I'm Smitty. Take a lap. I've got Yarks on the phone, who I lean to for a lot of the Cardinal insider information. He's my guy on the ground. Yarko, what's going on?
Smitty, what's up? How you doing, man?
Good. Talk to me about the Arizona Cardinal rumors that are circling the Valley in Arizona right now that relate to the Houston Texans trading Deshaun Watson to the Cardinals for Kyler Murray and a first-round pick.
Right now, there's been this is nothing but speculation. There was a couple of different writers across the country had, floated an idea around a news radio. They talked about it a little bit, but mostly just hypothetically, especially with all the connections between the Cardinals and the Texans over the last couple of years. So AZ Central had something on the fourth, basically just said the title, Watson trade speculation returns for the Arizona Cardinals. And then, another place, Sportskeeda, will the Cardinals trade for Deshaun Watson? And both, again, say the same thing, just speculation, but one ends with, hey, crazier things have happened. But you had said even earlier, it makes sense. It's one of those things where, at least for the Texans who are rebuilding, hey, you get a few pieces.
Yeah.
So it depends. It really so much depends on what time thinks of Watson versus Kyler. Me and you had talked. We said if you took Watson, you put him on our 5-2 football team last year, where we were at, what would have happened the rest of the season? We both kind of speculated we would have been better than an 8-8 team. So,
easily.
What do you see the difference as? And then what do you see Kyler's progression as? But so it's just all speculation. But it's fun to think about.
For me, I think the Cardinals can win 10, 11 games with a Deshaun Watson, and I think a lot of people would put them in the top 6, top 7 overall teams in the NFL, especially with the Watt signing. You got Chandler, you got Watt, you got an amazing defense, and now a quarterback that's going to, I think, control the clock a lot better.
Super Bowl or bust.
Yeah, Super Bowl contending team, but not to say that I feel really confident about that, but I feel like it's still possible with Kyler. It's just going to be like one of those, each game at a time type of, okay, we can go one more. Okay, we can go one more. Whereas Watson, it feels like solid. And you brought up a good point off air I want you to touch on real quickly about what if Kyler is tired of getting beat up and he just wants to go play baseball?
Yeah, they talk about that. He can go make a lot of money playing baseball, and it's a lot easier on the body. So, yeah, there may be a point. I don't think he's at that point yet. I think he's still driven. He's a highly competitive dude. I like him. But in any position, you want to upgrade. You want to get better. And if there's a better opportunity, hey, you explore all options. But, yeah, I absolutely do. I think we can still win with Kyler. Yeah, I'm super optimistic that he makes those progressions. I can see him take off the middle, on a scramble, before split to the outside, that we can see him go through those progressions and hit wide receiver number 2 or number 3. Yeah, I'm hopeful. I'm optimistic as well. I
like the idea the more I hear it. But again, I wish it was more than just speculation at this point. But maybe the talk, you said AZ Central, Gambo and Ash, the local radio show, a lot of these guys are talking about it. Maybe it sparks, some real talk between the two teams, and the Texans realize that's a move to make. I don't know.
Well, yeah, it's funny. I'm sure a lot of actual trades that may have happened probably got started in the media. I'm sure there's smart people out there, so I'm sure there's been GMs who've taken ideas. But yeah, it was to be clear, I think it was Burns the other day who was talking about on the radio, and he wanted to just bring it up, and just like you do on radio, you speculate, you talk about hypothetical, and Gambo was adamant about, just to be clear before he even started, it will will not happen. This is something that will happen. And he's usually pretty good about whether he thinks there's a possibility of something or not. So, but I don't know. This is one of the few times where I've maybe disagreed a little bit. Only because I think it depends on, what you think of the difference between the two guys.
Well, I don't agree with Gambo. I think it's going to happen. I'm feeling it now. So take that, Gambo.
Personally, I think, on a Cardinal standpoint, would I make that deal? I would trade for Deshaun Watson. I think Deshaun Watson is an absolute stud. There's pluses and minuses why you would even entertain it or not. Again, the Cardinals have not said anything. There's no it's pure speculation. But one reason why they want to be extra careful is you certainly don't want to hurt nobody's feelings. You don't want Kyler to get bothered because he heard that there was floating around the idea you're trading back and forth. So even if there was some sort of contact, it would be, kept under wraps.
So my question to you real quickly, sorry to interrupt, but do you feel like Watson would be a significant upgrade? I mean, Kyler, from a fantasy perspective, on a fantasy football show, it's sometimes we got to step back and say, okay, there is a difference between fantasy and actual NFL quarterback and what they're doing on the field. Usually it's, goes hand in hand. But in Kyler's case, he is more valuable from a fantasy perspective than just an NFL quarterback perspective. I don't think it's that far off. But Watson to you is like you go to the Super Bowl and Kyler, you keep losing the first game or maybe winning one playoff game. Like what's your thinking? Because I was completely shocked when you were like okay with this, because I thought you were a Kyler fan through and through.
Well, yeah. So you hit on a couple things. One, I'm a very hard Cardinal fan. I'm loyal to all our Cardinals and that. I like Kyler. I definitely think he has potential, but obviously there's some things. When you drafted him, he was a smaller guy. You knew there was going to be a learning curve for people to kind of figure him out. To an extent, before it wasn't so much shock value for every other team. But in that, some of those things, I think some of his, flaws or potential shortcomings as an NFL quarterback kind of showed themselves in the second half of last year. It was really frustrating being a 5-2, 6-3 football team, and then, which is almost a lock for playoffs, you have to actually try extra hard to not make it. And aside from, again, a Hail Mary against Buffalo, we would have been a 7-9 football team after that. So there was a huge drop-off in efficiency. Definitely had some, had a lot of stats in that. But again, talking to some of those flaws, one, it became difficult to run anything other than something screened Hopkins or something else. Hopkins became very predictable. They talked about Kyler still struggling with making a second read or even into his progressions further. Beyond that, also, I think he scrambled different than Deshaun Watson. Kyler was always out the outside, and what teams started doing is they just kicked their ends out. They said, don't let him get outside. He's so small, he doesn't like getting beat up the middle, and you got to be brave to step up in the middle when you don't know if there's a linebacker, hanging out behind that defensive lineman. But when I now flip it to Deshaun Watson, he's a taller guy. He's proven, and whereas Kyler could develop, he could be that guy. He's not a proven commodity yet. Stats-wise, he went to the Pro Bowl. He had the stats, fan favorite, all that. You'd love to draft him.
But how much of it has to do with the COVID offseason? Him and Hopkins are gonna get a lot better this offseason. Like, how much of it do you factor into like not being able to build that rapport yet with Hopkins and
I wouldn't say as much because I think him and Hopkins did actually stand a bigger rapport, and it was beyond that. It was like even looking at one of our, you talk about loyalty, long time favorite Larry Fitzgerald, but so maybe Larry's lost the set. Maybe it's more his fault because he's not getting open. But I find that hard to believe that there's not more targets for him. And then on top of Andy Isabella, I think again I'm going on random stats here, but there's even a stat that I think was a Pro Football Focus one that talked about Andy Isabella, like his grade. He's beating guys and he's open, but again, he says he looks like a failed pick. Christian Kirk, who flashes, but I think breathe. And then if we scramble and take advantage of his legs, which I love, absolutely, I love the fact that he has that dimension. But you got to step forward. Not everything can be a spin around outside the tackle.
Well,
maybe
is that
when appropriate?
Is that because he's too small? He literally can't like see above the line. Like, honest question: is he masking?
Yeah, it really is. That's why before this, there's never been. I think there's only been. He might have been the first quarterback ever selected number 1 that was under a certain height or something. That is a huge criteria when drafting a quarterback. Because you think about it, you have offensive linemen that are in defensive linemen that are beasts. 6'2", 3'4", ends that are 6'6". But Breeze, and there's been guys, Russell Wilson, who's smaller guys, have learned to find those pockets and have been effective. And Kyler can still do that, but that's also going to tie in with him being able to make progressions, which is, already difficult enough. Playing quarterback is not easy.
He is one of the top quarterbacks that likes to throw outside the pocket, and he hadn't been very accurate, heading into 2020. The thought was that Hopkins, who is one of the better players in the league, to accept a ball thrown when it's thrown outside the pocket, it looked like a match made in heaven. So are you thinking, I want to ask your opinion, if let's say a deal did happen between the Cardinals and the Texans, another deal, would this be something that the league would actually like step in and like look at it and be like, wait a minute, you can't have everybody from the Texans. This would be the Arizona Texans team. Or do you think it's
I think not unless they suspected some sort of collusion or something fishy. But no, I think every deal's made sense. I mean, none of us from Arizona thought the David Johnson deal made any sense.
Yeah,
but I certainly don't think they were trying to.
It didn't make sense.
Screw themselves over.
But okay, so Hopkins. Do you think Hopkins would enjoy being paired back up with Watson, or do you think he likes Kyler? Do you think he feels differently than you do?
Well, no, I'd say both. Sure, I think he has some rapport with Kyler. You probably played throughout your career with guys that you enjoyed playing with. He probably like both. But I don't think he would be bothered at all by being paired with Watson again. I think I don't know his stats from a couple years prior, but I don't think he had any issues, getting the ball.
I mean, Hopkins did have a really good year. And I brought up earlier, how much of the disconnect that you see relates to COVID and everything. But he did have a good connection with Hopkins. I was merely saying he could have a better one maybe and have a better one overall with all the other receivers like you were mentioning, Isabella and Kirk. The reason this was most appealing to me, just from a conversation perspective and in a like solving both teams' issues, is that Houston's they're going to lose by holding Watson. He doesn't want to play. I believe players, back when you and I started playing fantasy football, 20 plus years ago, a player it was all bluff. I'm going to hold out. No, you're not. But nowadays, a player, you don't know what they're going to do. You don't know what principle they're going to stand on. And I truly believe Watson's capable of holding out the entire season. So if you tell me Houston's going to get a Kyler Murray, a franchise quarterback, and get a first rounder too, this would be the win for them. This would be a move that would be a win for them, and it would be a win for the Cardinals too. So my last question.
Okay, go ahead.
Give me a one sentence answer on this. Is Cliff even remotely capable of doing a deal like this, or is he set on his boy Kyler that he cultivated?
It wouldn't be Cliff. It would be Time. Do I think Steve Keim would make that move? Yes, I do. If Steve Keim could pull that off, I mean, it's depending on how he views him, though. It depends on because I see Watson's already that guy. I'm concerned as to whether Kyler is going to develop into that guy. Depends on what progression. But I think if he saw Watson as a higher commodity, Keim, I appreciate him as a GM. He's had plenty of misses. He's certainly not perfect, but he doesn't sit on his heels. He tries to make moves. So
last question here. I told you that was the last one, but I have one more. Where do you anticipate Watson most likely to land if a deal happens? Now, Houston says they're not even answering calls. They're gonna take this the distance. We'll see about that. I don't think they're smart enough to use smoke and mirrors. So maybe this is true. But teams linked to a potential Watson deal: Chicago and Denver and the Panthers. There's some cap limitations for the Bears, not so much for the Broncos or Panthers. They're looking pretty solid and effective cap space.
I think on there, I think the Panthers would be, they're going to definitely make a huge pitch for Watson. I'm sure Bridgewater would be, included. There has to be a quarterback that comes back. So in that case, they do have, a quarterback, but it's not, necessarily anything more than maybe a bridge, exactly that. So they have to definitely, add additional compensation and draft picks. It has to be something that Texans they saw as a value. The Bears, I don't think they can pull it off because of their cap situation. Two other teams, whether it be either Miami has been linked because, again, you have a chip in Tua that you would send back on top of, maybe another player or draft picks. Texans are going to need draft picks, and they're going to need something to, ultimately build around. So Miami, and then who was the other team that I was going to
Carolina scares me because I don't want Christian McCaffrey leaving, and that's been one of the players linked to potential Deshaun Watson trade talks, but I don't think the Texans are smart enough to pull that off, to get Christian McCaffrey, and they just signed Ingram. I feel like I feel like it would be some other.
I think they want to build around a quarterback. I think that's got to be their top priority. Oh, the other team I was going to mention, I'm sorry, the Jets, because again, there's the option to get Sam Darnold in year 3, who again, he hasn't shown, what you would have hoped out of a guy drafted so high, but then again, he's played for the Jets, so he's been in a dysfunctional organization. So I'm sure Texans would certainly roll the dice on him if they got great additional compensation as well. So
and get that number 2
that quarterback in return.
And get that number 2 overall pick. That could be the quarterback, though.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. So,
yeah, I mean, I could see that. I could see the Texans maybe, if they made some smart moves, getting the number 2 overall pick, getting more compensation, and the Jets getting Deshaun Watson. And if Deshaun Watson went to New York, mark my words, Denzel Mims would become what I predicted that he would become. Right now, he's waiting for a quarterback, and he might wait until he becomes washed out. But I think the Jets could be a turnaround team, much like the Bills, if they got that quarterback, but they need the quarterback.
He was the Jets were actually the team that Deshaun Watson had requested, to go to. Maybe he wants to be in New York City. So,
yeah.
But,
well, hopefully the Texans smarten up and they start checking their voicemails and they say, let's call some of these people back.
I think the Texans they're in no hurry, whether or not Deshaun Watson ultimately, calls the shots in the end because he has the ability to sit out. I do think the Texans can certainly make him sweat and make other teams, pony up and come to the table. I think come draft day, I think there'll be a lot more talk on that, and I think that's typically when teams really start getting serious about making a move like that when they feel the pressure. So,
and this is said to be probably one of those drafts where we're going to see a lot more trades than normal. So we'll see if that comes true. I think whoever drafts the number 2 QB, I predict will not be what we think. It will be some kind of crazy maneuvering of draft picks and quarterbacks, and where Golladay goes. I somehow have this weird feeling that Watson and Golladay play together somehow, some way. It's going to be.
Maybe on draft night, pick number 2. They say the Jets have made a trade to acquire Deshaun Watson,
and then they sign Golladay. I think Golladay would be smart to wait and see where Watson is going because they both could get a fresh start together. And Golladay wants that new fresh start, wants that quarterback, and I could see those guys hooking up and become Golladay. People are so hard on Golladay, and they've already written him off. Like, this guy was a top 6 to 10 fantasy wide receiver walking into 2020. Now everybody's like, garbage, when it wasn't his fault. He was banged up.
I know last year was the first year I had him on my fantasy team, so he left a bad taste in my mouth. But yeah, he was.
He's a stud.
Definitely was.
He just needs a quarterback.
Yeah,
okay, Yarks, I appreciate your hot take here and clarifying some of the rumors. And just to preface, nothing's been confirmed or talked about from the Arizona Cardinal organization. It's just rumors going on in the Valley.
All right, you got it, Smitty.
This is the Fantasy Football Show with your host, Smitty.
5 running back.
You're watching the Fantasy Football Show.
Smitty.